can you tell us about a project you've done recently?
Yep, absolutely. So we've just, we finished doing a resource consent for a site in Henderson. It was about 1,400 square metres. It was at 20 James Lowry Ave in Henderson. What the developer decided to do was to retain the existing house and move it forward, and then build 8 two-bedroom, two-level townhouses at the back. We got that consent the early part of 2020, and I can say, as we speak now, that development is now finished. Most of those units have been sold and people are moving in. So from that inception, which would have been the very beginning of last year, to the lodgement and the approval of that consent through to finishing was probably about 18 months. So 7 or 8 month build and sort of 9 to 11 months to get all the consents, the resource consent, the subdivision consent, the building consent and the engineering approval. So that development is now finished. So it's a real working example of the Unitary Plan at work. And previously under the old Waitakere District Plan, we might have got 2, maybe 3 units. So what you're seeing is a doubling and in some cases a tripling of the densities or the amount of units we can fit on compared to the previous district plans. So the Unitary Plan is very enabling.
So with that development, and you've said, you know, what they achieved, which is quite amazing, under the older plan, would it have taken longer to get consent?
We would never have got a consent for that type of development, ever. We would never have tried. It would have been too hard, it would have been notified, and it would have been opposed by council planners.
Well, yeah, that's the Unitary Plan working, isn't it?
So what it was that there was never a shortage of land, because what they've created is they've created more land by creating more sites. They've created land vertically and they've created land horizontally. So before you had a restriction how many houses per square metre, now you've taken that away. So you've taken away that impediment to development potential, and you've also taken away what we used to do was just keep spreading out. So now we're able to redevelop existing what we call brownfield sites, and they can be redeveloped. And in this case, the existing dwelling was retained. So you've created different typologies, you've created different housing types for different people in different parts of the market. So those 2-bedroom terrace houses were probably mainly for first home buyers and entry level. The existing house was probably more for an established family. It's got 3 to 4 bedrooms. It's got a larger section, much smaller than what it had at 1,400 square metres, but much more usable and user friendly for a family, a busy family.
8 apartments went into the back. Is that
8
correct?
terraces went on the back. Yes.
So that's 9
units.
9 dwellings.
Where under the previous scheme we would have got district plan, we may have got 3. For me, the most important thing about property, especially being a first-home buyer, is the moment you've made your first purchase, if the market rises, you're rising with it.
Yeah.
And so the more we can provide supply, and to me supply is the biggest impediment, it's economics 101. I think Auckland Council with the Unitary Plan has done a very good job of it. I also think that the Unitary Plan should be rolled out in almost every other small, medium and large town in New Zealand, almost as a blueprint of how you would provide supply. And once you provide supply, you create an equilibrium, especially at that lower first home buyer level.
No.
Look, the Unitary Plan does have some downsides. You're going to have infrastructure constraints, and that's infrastructure in terms of capacity, and you're also going to have transport constraints, because you're going to have more and more people living and using their cars and having to get to work. So it is a silver bullet in terms of housing, but in terms of overall land use planning, you're going to get more congestion. And look, then people either have to shift modes of work, or they have to find an alternative way to get to work every day.
Absolutely.
Because let's take Point Chev, you've probably got an ability to triple the population of that township, that suburb. So that means the shops are far more viable, but it also means you're going to have a whole lot more traffic. You're going to have more pressure on schools, you're going to have pressure on parks, you're going to have pressure on infrastructure. I don't think that's been thought through, but we've solved the housing supply problem in Auckland.